My name's Karen Carbon and I form part of the professional services team for Twinfield, so I'll be guiding you through all the aspects of Pay and Collect. So it's just to let you know that this session will be recorded and the session will run for approximately 30 minutes. Okay, so I wanted to start with our first slide, which is the Neo interface. So if there's any of the Twinfield users that are using the server area C1 or C3, you will have this new look and feel interface. If you're using the servers C2 or C4, your update is going to happen on Monday evening. So on Tuesday when you log in, if you click onto the orange button for the new look and feel, which I will run through with you, you will have this screen. Right, so with our Pay and Collect, we're firstly going to go through the setup. So through the setup, we're going to look at word templates, and the word template is going to be used if you want to send out a remittance advice. The type is going to be the Pay and Collect type, which is going to be the driver. So are you using this to pay suppliers, contractors, expenses? So once we've actually set up our types, we need to go in and configure our accounts payable. So we'll be looking at the different tabs, so our bank area and our remittance tab as well. And then we're going to go into the functionality of how do I run my Pay and Collect? How do I create my supplier payments? How can I look at a schedule and run through how do I authorize this Pay and Collect run? We're going to look at how we create the payment file, how we send the remittances out, and how we finalize our payment run as well. Okay, so we're going to get started and we're going to run through how we actually look at our templates for our remittances. Where do we go? Where do we get those from? So I'm going to go into Twinfield. Okay, so at the moment I have my new look and feel area in front of me. And if I want to go back to the default area, I do have a button here which is for Twinfield Classic. But those of you that are using classic mode at the moment, you'll have a screen like this. And if you want to go into the new look and feel, if you're on the server type either C1 or C3, you can just click the orange button here. And if you're on C2 and C4, just remember on Tuesday, when you log back in, you will be able to click the same button and be taken into the new look and feel area. So the first thing we're going to go and have a look at is we're going to go into our word templates. So to go into our word templates, I've got my nice side hover bar at the side, which will actually just indicate to me where I am in Twinfield. And you've also got a nice search facility here. So if you're unsure of where something is when you're getting used to the new look and feel, we can just type in the name in the search area and it's going to take you straight to that area. So here I've got word templates, and it's this area that you would use to upload your word templates. Okay, but firstly, let's go and have a look at where we can go and download these templates from. So if I go back to our home key, and I can see that I've got my icon on the left hand side for the knowledge base. So in the knowledge base, I will have a search area, and I can just type in word and then just hit enter. And I can see that I've got my second option at 89%. How do I create a word invoice, reminder, letter, or a payment specification? So if I click into this option, it gives me some information about the Word documents and the different types of Word documents. And here, the second option I have is a Pay and Collect document, which I can download. You will also need to download the Word explanation template just in case you want to move things around. So just in the interest of time, what I've done is I've already downloaded these two documents. And if I just close out of this window, I would just open up. I'll just open up Explore, And if I go into Pay and Collect, I have my word explanation templates. And I can also just go and open up the actual Word template itself, which is fully customizable. So if you're a guru in Word, or even if you're a novice, there's loads of YouTube videos that you can watch that will help you bring yourself up to speed to be able to customize and do a simple customization on your templates. So this is just our basic template, and all I've done is just put on our Twinfield logo. Okay, so let's minimize Word and close out of all of these other areas. And now let's go into Pay and Collect. So from my side hoverbar, I have my option for purchases. And from purchases, I've got my Pay and Collect button here. But the first thing I want to do is to create the types. So if I click into types, you can see beneath I have already got some types which I have set up already. But if you need a different type, just say, for example, you would like to keep your staff expenses separate from the type that you use to pay your suppliers, we can just call one of our types expenses. So let's click next, and it takes us back through to our general area where I can actually just give this a short name. So I can just type in expenses again. And then the most important is the payment file. So if I just double click, I have a series of different options. So the main ones which is used for the UK we have is BACS, and we've got the BACS GB. And the BACS GB is just linked to the 5 banks, which is Barclays, we've got Lloyds, HSBC, NatWest and Morgan Stanley. But if you're not linked to one of those banks, then just choose BACS and then click next. Okay, so that's the general area already configured for us. The next option is the settings. So here we've got pay method and it says details. So if I've got 5 invoices, it will give me 5 different payments. But if you want all of your 5 invoices grouped together, you have an option called group, which will group all of those 5 invoices. If you want it to group all of those invoices and also include a credit note, you can choose group and offset. So the next option we have is delete, and delete will just take an invoice off the payment run. So if you've generated your payment run and there are several invoices that you do not wish to pay, then you can just simply just tick a button to remove those off your payment, and it will update your payment schedule. So I always have a tick for delete under value, and I make sure that's mandatory. Under the bank field, if you double click into the code field, you'll be able to pick up one of your banks. So I'm going to choose my bank here at the top. I've got Barclays, and I'll choose that as bank 1. So if you've got more than one bank you wish to pay out of, if you click and just tick this little box here under prompt, it will allow you to choose another bank account before you start your pay run. Under the remittance section, I'm going to tick use, and in the template area I'm just going to double click, and it's going to show me all of my Word templates. So the one which I want to use is my supplier remittance. And if you say that you want to use remittance advices, you do need to put in an email address. So I'm just going to type in my email address. So with our Pay and Collect runs, we normally have a bit of a delay to when the payment is actually going to hit the bank. So if you've got an agreement with your bank and you can upload your payment file, then generally there is about it could be a 3 or 4 day delay. So what I tend to do is under the dimensions, is just use a separate nominal code which is away from the bank. So when it does hit the bank, then I can actually just transfer it. So I have an account already set up for me. So if I just type in my code range 77, and I've got a code which is classed as bank transfers pending clearance. So once I have that nominal code set in the dimensions, I no longer need the wildcard, which is the star under my customer and suppliers. And this will just ensure that when I run my pay run and I finalize my run, that I can actually see the balance of my pay run against my balance sheet code 77C. So now if I click save, that is the first part of the setup done for me. And once you've actually saved your type, it will just list it under the code here for you. The code and the name will be there. So if I now just go back to the home key and hit the home key, the next thing I now need to do is to go into my dimensions for my accounts payable. So under our slide bar, we have an icon called Financial Professionals, and we have the option called Dimensions. And then we have our button here for our creditors. So I have 3 expense accounts which I've just recently set up, and I've set them quite a distance away from my suppliers. So I've set them up in the 2-9 range. So I have, these are my 3 employees that I need to pay expenses for. So if I click into my first employee, and on the Banks tab, the first thing I need to do is to choose the setting for automatic payment. So if I choose payment type, and from the drop down, I can see now I have my option called expenses. So just bear in mind, the minute you choose a payment type, you will need to make sure that you put in an account number and a sort code, because that's now mandatory. So if I just start typing in my account number and just a sort code. Okay, so that's the minimum information that I need to ensure that I can actually pay Kay Hurley her expenses. So if you're going to be sending a remittance advice, we now need to click on the Remittance Advice tab. And in the Remittance Advice field, you would just put in the name, you would just put in the email address for Kay Hurley. Okay, so just for this demonstration purposes, I'm just going to pop in my email address, and I'm just going to leave it to go to the file manager so we can actually just print out and have a look at what the remittance advice looks like. So if I now click save, so now I just need to repeat the step for my next 2 employees that have expenses. So once again, back on the bank tab, and they've already got details already put in there for them, but they're picking up the wrong payment type. So I'm going to just click the drop down and choose expenses, and then save, and then just repeat the step again for Sally Wise. This time I've chosen the payment type, and from the drop down I'm choosing the expense, and now I can click save. Okay, so I'm going to return back to the home screen. So that is my setup done, and normally the setup is just a one-time setup. And then after that, you're just going to be in the process of actually just going through and paying your suppliers. Okay, so to go through and create our suppliers, if we once again from the hover bar select purchase, and this time we can just click on the orange button Pay and Collect. And in this window you can see I've got no Pay and Collect runs in process. So if I click new, I can see on the left hand side I have the new type which I've created. So let's click open. And in this window I can see that I have my payment date. So if I wanted to push this payment date a bit further out, because I'm not going to pay them until next Wednesday, so I can just see on my calendar that next Wednesday is the 23rd. So I'm going to click into the field and just type in the 23rd of the 9th. It's in the correct period for me, and it's picking up my bank account because that's what I preset on our type screen. So now here we've got our criteria, And I can actually now narrow down this expenses range to say that I want to pick up by my employees. So I can just start typing in their code. So I can say right from K Hurley to 292, which is Sally Wise. And now I can specify a due date. So if I just want to pay any of their expenses up until the end of August, I can type in an actual due date. So let's just type in the 31st of the 8th. And now if I click next, it would just go through and start generating my payment run for me. So I can see that from my payment run, I've hit the refresh button to just hurry it up a little bit, and I can see that I've got a payment value of 723166. So I can do a number of things. I've got my actions over on the right hand side, and the first action is to edit, the second action is to view the payment schedule, and the third action is to authorize. So I'm going to click on my payment schedule because I want to actually review what transactions are going to be paid. So I can see that it's just picked up expenses for Kay Hurley and Andrew Young. So I've got a couple of expenses which is being paid for both of those, and I can see that they're both on the payment run. But if I only wanted to only pay one invoice for Kay Hurley and Andrew Young, I can go in and start doing a little bit of customization and editing this payment run. So let's close out of the payment schedule. And let's click on the edit pencil. So I can see that I've both got both of my employees, and over on the right hand side I have my magnifying glass. So if I click on the line details, here is where I can just untick to say that I only want to pay one of those expenses, and then click OK. And I can do the same by repeating the steps for Andrew Young as well. Let's just click on the line details once more. Okay, so this time I can actually say that I'm going to pay my first expenses for August, but then the second lot of expenses I'm only just going to pay $733.33. So I can make amendments to how much I want to pay. So now if I say OK, and if I now save, you can see that my original value was 723166, and now that I've done some amendments, it's now 434916. And if I go back to my payment schedule, it would have just updated with those changes that I've made. And you can see that the expense that I removed, the expense claim I removed for Kay Hurley, has actually been removed off the schedule. And that is the whole purpose, to make sure that when you create your type, you have delete flagged. Okay, so what you expect on the payment run, you have the exact true value. So now let's click close. So the next option is to authorize the payment run. So once I click the authorize button, it will give you an option to cancel out of it. But if you want to authorize this payment run, click OK. And then on the left-hand side, just click the refresh button to refresh those totals. And you'll now notice that the status has moved along. So we're at status 4 of 6. And if I go over to the actions area, you can see that we've got some different icons. So the first icon is to create that payment file. We have another icon for the remittance advice, and you can also review your payment schedule. If you've authorized by mistake and you need to put the payments back to how they originally were, you do have the chance to reverse the payments. Okay, so I'm going to use the first action icon, so let's create the payment file. And then you need to select the option Create File. So let's hit the refresh button once more. Okay, so now our status has moved along. We're now at status 5 of 6. We do have our payment file button here again, and we also have our create remittance advice. So at this stage, this is the stage where you would need to create your remittance advice. So if I click the button, it comes up with a little message with me to say that the remittance advices will be in the file manager, or if I've submitted an email address, it will just send those through directly. Okay, so once I'm happy with the whole payment run, the last step will be to actually finalize the whole payment run. Okay, but before we do that, I would like to go into the file manager and just show you the remittance advice which has been created. So if I now just click onto our file manager icon just on the top right hand corner, takes you straight into the file manager, and you have a folder called remittance advice. So if I click the remittance advice and click on the Word document, okay, it opens up the remittance advice for me, and that's the remittance advice which will get sent to Kay Hurley and Andrew Young. So let's just close out of this screen and go back into Twinfield. And if I now just go back to my hoverbar and select purchases once more, and let's go back into pay and collect. Okay, so the last step is going to be for me to finalize the payment run. So once I've finalized the payment run, it's all now posted to the ledger. I will no longer have an option to reverse or be able to send out any more remittance advices. So now let's click to finalize our expense run, and it will come up with a little message, and all I need to do is click yes or OK. And that is my payment run finalized. But if you want to review any payment runs that you've run, you do have the show completed payment run. So if I tick this box, it will show all the payment runs which have been run. And if you untick, okay, it will just remove all of the completed runs off the screen for you. Okay, so that's the whole cycle of us going through our pay and collect run. So if we just have a little recap, so we basically had a look at our Word templates, and we went through and had a look at the types. Once we created the type, we went into our dimensions for accounts payable, and we just looked at the bank tab where we entered in the bank details and chose the payment type. We also clicked on the remittance tab and entered in whether or not we wanted to send a remittance advice. And once we did that setup configuration, we actually went through generating our supplier payment run. We looked at our payment schedule. We looked at how we could actually go in and authorize and modify our payments. We've created our remittance advice. We created our payment file and also finalized our pay and collect run.